Hey, thanks for joining me in my art corner. My name is Kathy. Today, we'll be working on tutorial part 5. Ink and watercolor painting of hydrangea flowers and bumblebees, from the workbook by Sarah Simon. Flowers, feathers, and animal friends. I'll add the step-by-step instructions for each part on the screen, so you can refer to them as you paint. For this tutorial, you will need brushes, round numbers 1 and 4, waterproof ink, a Sharpie ultrafine point or another waterproof pen. You can use the micropen fine liner ink pens, which you can get on Amazon, and smooth watercolor paper. You will also need a tissue or paper towel to blot the paper. Add highlights and remove excess water or color from your brush or paper, as well as a container of clear water. I have already inked in the flowers and bees. Here's the suggested color palette. Hydrangea blue monstera, olive green, Payne's gray, lemon yellow, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and ivory black. I will not be using these exact colors. I will be using the closest colors that I have in my color water palette. You can follow the color palette, or you can use other colors that please you. Remember to watch to the end for a pro tip. Before we start, as an artist you can choose how bold, light, or colorful you want your hydrangea to be, and that depends on how much color you dab into your wet areas. Remember, the painting will dry 10 to 20% lighter. It's easier to add more color after your piece is dry than to try to decrease color saturation. We will come back to the flower petals for a second wash. Using a wet and dry glaze on the hydrangea, this will add a contrast to the flowers. Also, I think the stars of this piece are the leaves. I have always struggled with painting leaves, whether with acrylic or watercolor. Here's a watercolor I did where I let my creativity take over and was very pleased with how it came out. So don't be afraid to let your creativity lead the way. Alright, with all that said, let's get started. Number 1. Wash the top 1/3 of the cluster of hydrangea petals with clear water, keeping the stems dry. Next, dab in hydrangea blue into the wet. Now you will wash the bottom third of the flower cluster of the flower petal, then dab in hydrangea blue. Okay, for the last part. Wash the middle third of the cluster of flower petals, overlapping a small part of the upper third with water. And use your brush to scrub out any hard lines that may be forming between the two washes. Add dabs of hydrangea blue in the wet in the middle third. Number 2. Paint one leaf at a time. Wash the leaf with clear water, including the veins. We'll come back at the end to add more color to the veins. Add dabs of color in the wet of monstera, olive green and Payne's gray, alternating between each color. Repeat for each leaf. Let the leaves dry. As you can see, I'm not following the suggested colors, but that's okay. This is a practice lesson. It's a good way to see what you like. Let's move on to the bumblebees. 3. Using the number 1 brush or the smallest brush you have, wash the bee's body with clear water. Add dabs of color in wet, of lemon yellow and yellow ochre. Repeat for each bee. Four. Making sure that the flowers are dry, add wet on dry dabs of yellow ochre to the center of the flowers. Five. Once the leaves are dry, wash the main stems, flower stems, and the leaf veins in burnt sienna. I thought I would add some more color to the bees. 6. To add more saturation of color to the flowers, add wet on dry hydrangea blue to individual petals. Make sure that you don't add color to all petals, just here and there around the piece. As you can see, the glazing techniques add color variation, depth, and more interest to the flowers. After the paint is dry, you can add more color. You can add some more color to the leaves, so go ahead and do some experimenting. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do, so you don't miss the next tutorial, which will be a cozy, sleepy fox. I will focus on, along with watercolor, will include adding fur to the fox with inking techniques. So be sure to join me. I decided to add a little more color to the bees. A very transparent gray to the wings. The main lesson for today is to build color slowly to your watercolor painting by using the glazing technique. So, have some fun practicing with this technique. With that done, now for the pro tip, preventing blooms and streaks. Blooms and streaks in watercolor paintings require controlling water, timing, and technique. Ensure the brush and paper have balanced amounts of water. Too much water on the brush or an overly wet area on the paper can lead to blooms as the pigment spreads unpredictably. If the paper is too dry, adding wet paint can cause streaks or hard edges. Aim for an evenly damp surface when blending. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed learning the simple glazing technique. If you did, please subscribe and like. It helps the algorithm promote the video. Happy painting!